My entire future vanished the moment she walked out with my bag, but the true battle began when she accused me of theft. With police closing in, my only hope lay in the quiet details of a drawing. The worn canvas of my tote bag felt like an extension of my own skin. It had been my grandmother's, and now it was mine, carrying the weight of my entire world. Inside, nestled between my half-finished art history textbook and a dog-eared sketchbook, was an envelope. A plain, white business envelope, now soft and crumpled at the corners from how many times I'd counted its contents. $756. The result of 3 months of 8-hour shifts on my feet, smelling of burnt coffee and disinfectant. All for a new laptop. My current one sounded like a jet engine taking off every time I opened more than 2 tabs. And for my graphic design major, it was a death sentence. I was sitting in that same coffee shop, the daily grind, trying to cram for a midterm. The place was packed with the usual afternoon crowd students like me, typing furiously, and others who seemed to have nowhere else to be. I'd claimed a small booth in the corner, my fortress against the world. My shift had ended an hour ago, but the exhaustion was a deep, unshakable ache in my bones. I accidentally knocked over my water, a small puddle spreading dangerously close to my notes. Cursing under my breath, I slid out of the booth and walked to the counter to grab a fistful of napkins, my eyes never leaving my table. It was a 10-second trip, max. When I turned back, my heart didn't just drop. It evaporated. The booth was empty. My textbook was there, my jacket was still slung over the seat, but my bag, my grandmother's bag, my $756, my future, was gone. Panic, cold and sharp, clawed its way up my throat. I scanned the room, my eyes darting from face to face. Nothing. Then I saw her. A woman, maybe a few years older than me, was heading for the door. She was wearing a trench coat that probably cost more than my entire semester's tuition, and carrying a sleek, black leather handbag. But tucked under her arm, almost hidden, was a flash of familiar faded blue canvas. My canvas. Excuse me. The words flew out of my mouth louder than I intended. Heads turned. The woman froze for a split second, her back to me, before continuing to walk. Adrenaline surged through me, overpowering the exhaustion. I rushed towards her, my voice shaking. "Excuse me, miss. I think you have my bag." She turned around slowly, an expression of pure, unadulterated annoyance on her face. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, her makeup immaculate. She looked me up and down, a sneer playing on her lips. "I'm sorry. Do I know you?" she asked, her voice dripping with condescension. "My bag," I repeated, pointing a trembling finger at the canvas tote she was clutching. "The one under your arm. It's mine. You just took it from my table." She laughed. It wasn't a nice sound. It was sharp and brittle. "I think you're mistaken," she said, pulling her expensive leather purse closer, as if I were about to snatch it. "This is my bag. I've had it for years." My blood began to boil. "No, you haven't. That was a gift from my grandmother. There's a small coffee stain shaped like a bird on the strap. Right here." I pointed to the spot, my voice rising in desperation. "And all my money is in there. My tuition money. Please, just give it back." The scene was starting to draw a crowd. The manager, a flustered man named Kevin, scurried over. "Is there a problem here, ladies?" "Yes," the woman snapped, turning her glare on him. "This person is accusing me of theft. It's absurd. Do I look like I need to steal this?" She held up my worn tote bag with 2 fingers, as if it were a piece of garbage. The casual cruelty of it stole my breath. "It has my things in it," I insisted, tears welling in my eyes. "My student ID, my keys, a photo of my grandma. Please, just look inside." "I will do no such thing," she said haughtily. "I don't have to prove anything to you. In fact, I think I'm the one who should be calling the police. You're harassing me." And with that, she pulled out a brand new iPhone, her thumb hovering over the screen. The threat hung in the air, thick and suffocating. I knew how this would look. Me, a frantic black girl in a worn-out hoodie, accusing this polished, wealthy-looking white woman. I knew who they would believe. My entire future was slipping through my fingers, and all I could do was watch. "Please," I whispered, the fight draining out of me. "Just give it back." She ignored me, her voice now syrupy sweet, and filled with fake panic as she spoke into her phone. "Yes, hello? I'm at the Daily Grind on campus. A woman is attacking me, trying to steal my purse. Please send someone quickly." My world tilted on its axis. Attacking her. The lie was so blatant, so audacious, it was like a physical blow. The manager wrung his hands, uselessly telling us both to please calm down, but it was too late. Within minutes, the chime of the coffee shop door was replaced by the heavy thud of police boots on the floor. 2 officers entered, their expressions grim and impatient. The woman immediately burst into tears, a performance worthy of an Oscar. "Oh, thank God you're here, officers," she cried, pointing a perfectly manicured finger at me. "That girl, she came out of nowhere and tried to rip my bag from my hands. She keeps saying it's hers. She's crazy." One of the officers, a tall man with a hardened face, turned his cold, assessing gaze on me. His hand rested on his belt, his eyes filled with suspicion. He didn't see a terrified student. He saw a threat. He took a step towards me, his voice low and devoid of any warmth. "Ma'am, is what she's saying true?" My mouth felt like it was full of cotton. All the moisture had evaporated, replaced by a metallic taste of fear. "No," I managed to say, my voice a thin, reedy thing. "No, officer, that's not true at all. She stole my bag." I pointed to the booth. I was sitting right there. I went to get napkins, and when I turned back, she was walking out the door with it. The woman let out a theatrical sob. "Why is she lying? I just came in for a latte. I was on my way out when she accosted me." She clutched my bag to her chest, as if for protection. It was the most surreal thing I'd ever seen. My grandmother's bag, the one with the frayed strap I'd tried to mend with dental floss, being used as a prop in this woman's twisted play. The second officer, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "Ma'am," he said, his eyes on me, "can we see your ID, please?" A fresh wave of panic crashed over me. It's in the bag," I stammered. "My wallet, my student ID, my keys, everything is in that bag." The first officer scoffed, a short, sharp sound of disbelief. "How convenient," he muttered, sharing a look with his partner. To them, the story was already written. I was just another unhinged troublemaker. The woman saw her advantage and pressed it, her fake tears miraculously drying up, replaced by a look of righteous indignation. "You see," she said, her voice dripping with venomous pity. "She has no ID. She's probably not even a student here. She's just trying to cause trouble, maybe looking for a handout." A handout. The words hit me harder than a slap. All those hours of standing until my feet swelled, of scrubbing milk frothers and taking out smelly garbage, of sacrificing sleep and a social life, all of it reduced to a lazy, racist stereotype. A hot, angry energy started to burn through the fear. My grandmother didn't raise me to be a doormat. "That is my bag," I said, my voice gaining strength. I looked past the officers, past the thief, to the other patrons in the coffee shop. Some were staring openly now, their phones held low, probably recording. Others were trying very hard to look at anything else, but I saw the flicker of doubt in some of their eyes. They'd seen me here before. They knew I worked here, but no one said a word. The manager, Kevin, looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. I was completely, utterly on my own. "Okay," the first officer said, taking a step closer. He was trying to intimidate me, using his size to loom over me. "We've heard your side. Now you need to calm down and step away from this lady before we have to place you under arrest for harassment." Arrest. The word echoed in the sudden silence of the room. My scholarship, my degree, my entire future could be destroyed in the next 30 seconds because this woman decided my property looked better in her hands. My mind was racing, frantically searching for a way out, for some proof that wasn't just my word against hers. The coffee stain wasn't enough. The photo could be explained away. The money, she could just say it was hers. And then it hit me, like a flash of lightning in a dark room. The sketchbook. I lifted my head and looked directly into the officer's cold eyes. "There's a sketchbook in that bag," I said, my voice suddenly clear and steady. The change in my demeanor made him pause. "It's a black moleskin, large, with a dent in the back cover where I dropped it. And on the very last page there is a charcoal drawing I did less than an hour ago." I felt the woman stiffen beside him. I didn't look at her. I kept my eyes locked on the cop. "It's a portrait," I continued, the details coming to me sharp and clear, "of an old man who was sitting at that table by the window. Mr. Henderson. He comes in every day. He has a big white mustache and wears a tweed flat cap. In the drawing, he's frowning at a crossword puzzle, and the light from the window is hitting the left side of his face. The charcoal is probably still smudged because I didn't have time to use any fixative." A murmur went through the small crowd. Kevin, the manager's eyes went wide. He knew Mr. Henderson. Everyone who worked here knew him. I finally turned my gaze to the thief. Her mask of cool superiority was gone, replaced by a flicker of raw animal panic. Her knuckles were white where she gripped the strap of my bag. "Go on," I said, my voice dropping to a near whisper, but it carried across the silent room. "Open it. Open the bag and turn to the last page of the black sketchbook. If that drawing isn't exactly as I described it, you can take me to jail. I won't say another word." I took a deep breath, putting every ounce of remaining strength into my final challenge. But if it is... The air in the coffee shop became thick and still. Every eye was on the woman, this blonde, well-dressed thief who had underestimated me so spectacularly. Her perfectly painted mask of composure began to crack. A bead of sweat trickled down her temple, smudging her foundation. Her grip on my bag was so tight her fingers looked like claws. The first officer, the one who had looked at me with such disdain, turned his head slowly towards her. "Ma'am," he prompted, his voice no longer accusatory towards me, but dangerously neutral towards her. "What about it? Is there a sketchbook in there?" She licked her lips, her eyes darting towards the door as if calculating her chances of making a run for it. "This is ridiculous," she blustered, but her voice was an octave too high. "I'm not going to be subjected to this search. You have no right. We have a credible accusation and a specific piece of evidence that can be verified right now," the second officer said calmly, stepping forward and holding out his hand. "Please, ma'am, hand over the bag." It happened in a blur. Instead of handing it over, she did the one thing I hadn't expected. She shoved my precious tote bag into the first officer's chest, a desperate, clumsy move designed to create a moment of chaos. In that same motion, she spun around and bolted for the door. Her expensive high heels scraped against the linoleum, and she might have made it, but in her haste she slammed into a small table where a student was working. The student yelped, a laptop clattered to the floor, and the woman stumbled, her sleek black leather handbag flying from her grasp. It tumbled through the air in slow motion, landing with a heavy, sickening thud. The clasp sprung open, and its contents spilled across the floor like a dirty secret. A Chanel lipstick rolled under a chair, a set of car keys skittered near the police officer's boots, and something else. A heavy, dark blue velvet pouch about the size of a fist, tied shut with a silk cord. The second officer had her by the arm before she could even regain her balance. She let out a pathetic shriek, struggling against his firm grip as he expertly twisted her arm behind her back and slapped a pair of handcuffs on her wrists. The click of the metal echoed in the stunned silence. "You're making a mistake," she screamed, her voice raw with genuine panic now. "You can't do this. Do you know who my father is?" But nobody was listening to her anymore. All eyes, including mine, were on the first officer. He had effortlessly caught my bag. With a look of grim purpose, he unzipped the main compartment. He pushed aside my textbook, my crumpled envelope of cash, and his hand emerged holding a large black moleskin sketchbook with a familiar dent in the back cover. My heart hammered against my ribs. He didn't even have to flip through it. He just opened it to the very last page. He held it up, his expression unreadable. From where I stood, I could see the distinct charcoal-smudged face of Mr. Henderson, frowning at his crossword puzzle, the light from the window rendered in soft gray tones. The officer looked from the drawing to the window, where Mr. Henderson, oblivious to the drama, was still sitting, his posture identical to my sketch. The officer lowered the sketchbook and looked at me. For the first time I didn't see suspicion in his eyes. I saw a grudging, undeniable respect. He nodded once, a silent apology, and a confirmation all in one. Then he turned his attention back to the scene on the floor. "What's this?" he asked, nudging the velvet pouch with the toe of his boot. His partner, still holding the now sobbing woman, shrugged. With a gloved hand, the first officer knelt down. He picked up the heavy little bag, weighing it in his palm. The woman stopped crying instantly, her breath catching in a choked gasp. A new kind of terror, far deeper and darker than the fear of being caught for petty theft, washed over her face. "Don't," she whispered, the word barely audible. "Please. That's not mine." "I don't know how that got in there." The officer ignored her. With methodical slowness, he pulled the silk cord. The mouth of the velvet pouch gaped open. He tipped it slightly, and a cascade of small, tightly sealed plastic baggies tumbled out onto the floor. Dozens of them. Each one was filled with a chalky, crystalline white powder. The entire atmosphere in the coffee shop changed. The air went from tense to ice cold. This wasn't just about a stolen bag anymore. This was something else entirely. The officer looked up at his partner, his eyes wide. The color drained from the woman's face, leaving her a ghastly shade of pale. The sneer was gone. The arrogance had evaporated. All that was left was the hollow, silent scream of a life that had just ended. The sight of those little baggies scattered across the coffee shop floor felt like a scene from a movie, too surreal to be happening right in front of me. The officers exchanged a look that spoke volumes. Their entire demeanor shifted from dealing with a minor dispute to handling a major felony. The first officer carefully gathered the baggies back into the velvet pouch using his gloved hand, his movements precise and deliberate. "Well, well, Karen," the second officer said, his voice laced with grim irony as he tightened his grip on the woman's arm. I realized with a jolt that I never even learned her real name. Karen felt fitting. "Looks like you have bigger problems than a stolen tote bag." She started rambling then, a waterfall of panicked, incoherent excuses. "It's not mine. I was holding it for a friend. Someone must have planted it. My father is a lawyer. He'll sue you for this. This is entrapment." Her protests were background noise. The first officer walked over to me, my sketchbook still in one hand and my precious tote in the other. He held them out. "Ma'am, I believe these are yours," he said, his voice formal but the apology clear in his tone. "I am very sorry for the misunderstanding." I took my bag, my hands trembling slightly as I clutched the familiar worn canvas. The weight of it was grounding, real. "Thank you," I whispered. I unzipped the side pocket and found the white envelope. I didn't even need to count it. I could feel that the money was all there. A wave of relief so profound washed over me that my knees felt weak. As the officers began escorting Karen out, reading her Miranda rights, the coffee shop erupted in a low buzz of conversation. People were pulling out their phones again, but this time they were looking at me. Kevin, the manager, rushed over, his face a mess of shame and relief. "I'm so sorry," he said, wringing his hands. "I should have. I knew you wouldn't. I'm so sorry." "It's okay, Kevin," I said, and to my surprise, I meant it. The anger I'd felt had been burned away by the sheer shock of it all. "No, it's not," he insisted. "You handle this place when I'm gone. You're the most honest person I know. Let me get you a new laptop. As an apology. From the store." I was stunned. "Kevin, you don't have to do that. The money is here." "I want to," he said, his eyes pleading. "Please, it's the least I can do." Before I could answer, an older man with a kind face and a tweed flat cap approached my table. It was Mr. Henderson. He'd been watching the whole thing from his corner. He placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Young lady," he said, his voice a gravelly baritone, "that was one of the bravest things I have ever seen. You stood your ground." He then looked at my sketchbook, which the officer had placed on the table. "And might I say, you are an exceptionally talented artist." Tears, hot and sudden, filled my eyes. They weren't tears of fear or frustration anymore, but of overwhelming gratitude. After everything that had just happened, his simple, genuine compliment meant the world to me. The next few hours were a blur of police statements and paperwork. They needed my testimony, a formal statement of what happened. They treated me with a respect that was worlds away from their initial suspicion. As it turned out, Karen, her real name was Kimberly, was the daughter of a prominent city councilman. She had been on their radar for a while, suspected of being a small-time dealer peddling drugs to wealthy students around campus, but they'd never been able to catch her with anything. My stolen bag, and her subsequent panic, had just handed them the case of a lifetime on a silver platter. Her life of privilege hadn't just been ruined, it had imploded spectacularly because she couldn't resist stealing a $700 laptop fund from a girl she saw as beneath her. When I finally walked out of the coffee shop, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The world felt different, sharper. I felt different. I had faced down a thief, a liar, and a system that was ready to believe the worst of me, and I had won. I had found my voice when it mattered most. The next day, Kevin was true to his word. A brand new, top-of-the-line laptop was waiting for me, paid for by the company. I tried to protest, but he wouldn't hear it. I kept my $756, tucking it away as the beginning of a proper emergency fund. A week later, I saw a news report online. Kimberly had been denied bail. Her powerful father had disowned her publicly, calling her actions a disgrace. Her face in the mugshot was a pale, tear-streaked shadow of the arrogant woman who had sneered at me. There was no condescension left, only the empty eyes of someone whose entire world had been built on a foundation of lies, and had just watched it all crumble to dust. I closed the news tab. I didn't feel triumph or even pity. I just felt quiet. I opened my new laptop. It booted up in seconds, the screen bright and flawless. I opened my design software, picked up my stylus, and began to draw. Outside my window, the city buzzed with life, full of countless stories. I finally had the right tools to start telling my own, and I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that I would never, ever let anyone silence me again.